know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I am your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose one year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. This week on the podcast, we are joined by Jay and Clifton, the hosts of the podcast Your Music Saved Us, which is a look back at the Christian music albums of the 90s that they, the hosts, enjoyed from a perspective of no longer Christian. So it's a really fun premise of a show. I've been enjoying the show for a while now, and I was extremely happy to get them on the show. And if you enjoy this episode, you can hear me on their podcast tomorrow. So the day after this episode goes up, you can go to the Your Music Saved Us podcast in whatever app of your choice and listen to me talk about Prime Candidate for Burnout. Is it Prime Candidate for a Burnout, or is it Prime Candidate for Burnout because it's different on different parts of the internet? Do you know off the top of your head? I always said A.
It's for Burnout. It's Prime Candidate for Burnout, is according to Discogs.
So Spotify has for a Burnout, which I find very interesting. I guess Discogs is probably more accurate.
Yeah.
And if we could look at the spine of that CD, it'll probably tell us right away. But it is weird that it's been wrong in many places on the internet.
Yeah. I don't know where that stems from, other than they upload it wrong on when they're whatever they distributed it.
It is for Burnout.
It is for Burnout on the spine. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, weird typo.
Which would make more sense than for a Burnout. Like a Prime Candidate for Burnout.
Yeah.
Is this guy is going to burn out. Whereas Prime Candidate for a Burnout is this guy is going to do a burnout. It's going to be so sick.
It was just about doing hood rat shit.
Prime Candidate for doing donuts in the middle of an intersection.
So, Dylan, you were not able to join us on that episode, and I meant to ask you your thoughts on that record. I guess while we're here, do you have like little pithy thoughts on Prime Candidate for Burnout?
It is a good record. I think that it holds up pretty well. I enjoy it more now than I used to, I think. It's an interesting one. It's a weird kind of punk because I feel like they were a little bit skate punk, but a little bit DC.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd fusion of sounds.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels like. Because we point out, you'll have to listen to it tomorrow, but we do talk about the Discord sound quite a bit, but we don't really talk about the West Coast SoCal punk sound that is also a part of that. Despite they're from Seattle, but yeah, they're an interesting band. It's a really interesting record, and yeah, you'll have to hear my thoughts on it tomorrow on their show. But today, what are we talking about?
We are talking about the year 2006, and the record "The Body, the Blood, the Machine" by the Thermals.
Yeah,
an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I think it was really good. A really good conversation. We do address some of the issues with the Thermals in the body of the show. We'll let you get to that. But yeah, we are fully aware of some of the issues around this band. And we talk about it pretty extensively. So yeah. But yeah, I think it's a really good conversation, even if the goal of it isn't necessarily to make you a fan of the record. If you head over to patreon.com/punklautopod, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio, where last week, what did we do?
We did a bracketology, right?
We did a bracketology on the year 2006, which is the third time we have done a bracketology on that year. I don't know how we've done that year 3 times, but most years only once. It's a weird timing coincidence that we've hit that one up so many times. I also released Part 3 of the Metalcore Chronicles after finally teasing it for weeks and weeks, months even. I finally was able to get it recorded and getting some good feedback on it. It's a very fun series. I love doing it. It's just very time consuming. But yeah, I enjoy doing that quite a bit. And I talk about Integrity's Those Who Fear Tomorrow, which we did a whole episode on. The Converge debut 7-inch, which is just a glorified demo. Rorschach's Needle Pack. A bunch more demos from bands like Snapcase, 108, Chokehold, and then a bunch of stuff from more obscure bands like Drift Away or Conviction. You should have seen the list of all the album artists that I had. Almost all of them were one-word band names, which is a very 90s hardcore metalcore thing to do. You can also sign up at our $5 tier where you get to become a producer on the show, and we will say your name out every single week. So let's thank our producers, Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. Thank you to Dave Brown, host of the podcast One Band, Five Songs. Thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. And thank you to Zach in Oregon, who can dunk a pretty sweet volleyball.
Do you dunk volleyballs?
Well, he did. And as a producer, you get access to a once-a-month exclusive piece of audio where we devote an entire episode to an EP. And we can go ahead and announce it. We are talking about Texas of the Reason's self-titled EP, which is just a 3-song EP. So we'll be recording that shortly. But if you would like to get in there and hear that audio or vote in future polls on what we're going to discuss next month, sign up at that $5 tier. And our $10 tier, where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to, which we have one of those coming up next week. So be on the lookout for that. And I think that'll do it. So enjoy this conversation with Jay and Clifton of the podcast Your Music Saved Us. We are joined here by Clifton and Jay, the hosts of the podcast Your Music Saved Us. Jay, Clifton, welcome to the show.
Howdy, y'all. Great to be here.
Thank you for doing it. I stumbled across your show thanks to Daniel Otto Peterson of Blaster the Rocket Man.
Interesting.
Sharing the episode you guys did way back on succulent space food for teething vampires.
Yeah, it was one of our first.
Yeah. He was responding to it on Facebook through like the Blaster account because they had just announced that Blaster was coming back for a reunion at Audio Feed. Very funny. Especially considering he does not consider himself Christian anymore, and that's like the Christian festival.
Right.
So then I checked it out. First episode I listened to, I believe, was the Carmen episode.
I'm sorry.
We've
had 3 Carmen episodes, excuse me.
The Satan Bite the Dust episode, where you go like basically frame by frame through the music video of that song.
I don't remember. Is that song from the Carmen CD that you had, Justin?
Oh, let's see. The one I had,
You had the one where he's like a James Bond.
I had that one.
Secret agent.
Mission 316. I had the Mission 316 maxi single. I didn't have the true album. It just had like half the record. And then my parents bought me another one later, but it was an older album. Revival in the Land is the one that they bought me.
Oh, I think that one has Witch's Invitation, right?
Yep. Yeah. Witch's Invitation on that one. Yep. So when I saw you guys were doing like Carmen, and then you're also doing, Officer Negative and like Plank Eye and 5 Iron Frenzy, I was like, I think this is a podcast for me. So I dove like head first in. I'm going through the entire back catalog. I'm up to 35. Out of the original run, and then I listen to the new ones as those come out too. So nice. you've covered a lot of stuff.
We try to make it diverse.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the stuff is music that we think still kind of holds up.
Yeah.
Right.
And then some of it, like Carmen, is just god awful, and it's more us going back and unpacking like, oh wow, there's some like pretty messed up beliefs in there. Early on, like, oh, now I understand why I thought some of the things I did.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of tracks that natural, like youth group music and defining your own music type stuff,
Yeah.
I guess we could lay out the premise of the show for our listeners in case they haven't heard yet. But you could probably lay it out more concise than I could. So what's the premise behind this show?
We basically go back and look at the Christian music that we grew up listening to in the 90s. Anything, like I said, from youth group music to the stuff that we found, in Christian bookstores, which we kind of like, which were strangely enough like little indie music stores in a weird way, because of Tooth and Nail and some other labels. and neither of us are believers anymore, and so we just kind of what we say revisit and recontextualize all that stuff, including the culture around it and all that.
It's funny, whenever I thought of the idea of us doing a crossover episode, I thought it was very interesting that the two of you consider yourself non-believers and you're still doing Christian music podcasts. Meanwhile, Dylan and I think, I don't want to speak for you, Dylan, but I think we still identify as Christian at some point. I mean, I don't know exactly where I am on that, as far as I do not like the current state of the church or anything like that, but we're both Christian and we do non-Christian records. So it's just very funny to me that we have each other's show, basically.
Yes, right.
I mean, I would say I'm a very lax practitioner of Christianity, but I am a confirmed Episcopalian. My wife is, pretty regularly, actively going to church and involved with church things. I just work brunch a lot on Sunday mornings. So
yeah.
Yeah, I go on, Easter and Christmas, the weekday services.
I think for us, it's just kind of useful for like deconstruction and personal therapy kind of stuff also.
Yeah. I think we didn't anticipate it being that much personal therapy, but it's definitely been that.
Yeah.
That is like one of the things I absolutely love about the show, is that you dive really deep on a lot of the like fucked up beliefs that a lot of these bands were singing about. And you have the wherewithal to be like, I think this is why I thought this awful shit, is because I was listening to this music.
Yeah.
And it's a very like complicated industry for sure. Yes.
I think we would dig more into the industry. We would dig into the industry more if it wasn't so dark. And like I kind of don't like looking at it sometimes, because it is just a mess and gross, and some of those people are still around and some people still love them, and even though they're kind of pieces of shit,
Yeah. And just to give slight other view, there are a few that we've gone back to that I'm like, God, I wish I'd spent more time with this.
Oh yeah.
Like some of the messages on Five Iron Frenzy's first album, or some others, I'm like, I should have been listening to this more than some of those other things. Probably would have turned out a little better for me. But anyway.
Yeah.
You mentioned
definitely where the money was where the worst viewpoints were in the Christian music industry.
I don't know.
It wasn't too hard to find good politics with like your, tooth and nail bands that are playing house shows in California.
Well, I mean, you guys are going to come on to talk about Blenderhead, and I don't know if you've taken a sneak peek at those lyrics yet, but we've got some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and I know there's stuff Billy regrets.
Yeah, it is funny that even the more lefty ones are still got like weird beliefs in there. It's just like that probably comes from trying to fit in this like Christian music mold and formatting your lyrics to in a way that like maybe it's just to get the approval of the Christian bookstore. But it's like, I don't even know what I'm saying then. I just it just has more Jesus per minutes in the song.
Ooh, those ones, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could always do the agony scene thing where you just don't print the lyrics in the booklet.
That does happen quite a bit. Like we've done some Mike Knott stuff where he says some, pretty damning things, and he doesn't print his lyrics a lot of times, so it does happen. But I just can't imagine like being someone like Five Iron Frenzy. Like, how do you find yourself to be both progressive and an evangelical? It's very
in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful I was a Five Iron fan, because like out of those bands, they probably had some of the best politics.
Oh yeah.
And even they have stuff in some of their lyrics where you're just like, ugh.
They do.
But they were better than most.
Yes. Better than
they
90%.
they have things that Reese Roper has said, in recent years that he's even walked back, so
not the Mayo stuff, but
yeah, no.
Yeah, right.
The pork and beans
pinatas
are a-okay.
Yes,
which the pork and bean pinata was something that I think was taken from Mike Knott too.
Oh really?
I think LSU did it first. And they loved it so much that they did it themselves. But
that's not surprising. That's not at all surprising.
Which is really funny, because that feels a lot more like yeah, this is really gonna fuck with them.
Yeah.
When it's Mike not doing it.
Yeah, where it's just silly when Five Iron Frenzy does it.
Right.
Yeah, they're just like Star Trek characters, and
Yeah.
and he's got his face like painted white for some reason. It's just like, you don't wear makeup like that. That's weird.
He's doing like Bob Dylan,
One thing you hinted at a little bit earlier there, you talking about how these Christian bookstores almost served as independent record stores, and especially like coming in from a place where you guys grew up,
Right, where we didn't even have independent record stores.
right? But you had Christian bookstores, which, as people who grew up in a similar situation where we just had big box stores like your Walmarts and Best Buys, along with your Christian bookstores.
Yeah.
That the Christian bookstore is the place where we found punk, hardcore, emo, all metal, some of the most extreme metal I'd ever heard. I heard in Solid State Records bands,
Yep. And they would just open up the CDs and let you listen to it right there in the store.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was so glorious. Just being able to go in there and be like, I want to hear this, and then listen to it. You're like, not for me. Put it back.
Yes.
that opening the CD and being able to listen to the store like pushed so many purchases. Like it was just like, oh, I heard like a song on this comp and I'm like interested in this, but I'm also interested in this like probably like would have been a really regrettable purchase, just like a really crappy generic like pop punk knockoff or something. And it's like, oh, and and you go listen and you skip through the tracks and you're like, I actually really like this. And you wind up with the good CD that you can actually go back to and revisit.
Exactly, because like I know for me, like I'm 16 years old. I've got $8, not because I have $8, but because my parents gave me lunch money and I saved $1 each day by not buying a full lunch, and and like I'm scared I'm gonna get a bad CD. Like if you let me listen to it, I'm gonna like I'm gonna buy something, right? So yeah, it was a great way to push music on us.
and it was like weirdly enough, like a hangout. Like we had one in town that had like listening booths. So me and my friends would just spend God knows how long in there, just like getting the demos and listening to like one and switching them out and listening to another and stuff. Like it was, again, what people who probably grew up in much bigger cities that had independent record stores, or, you think of like the movie High Fidelity or something, these people that just hang out in the store, like that was us in the Christian bookstores. I know some people listening are probably like, what the fuck? But like, it's true. It's really true.
I think ours was definitely not as cool. Our Christian bookstore definitely, the kids were hanging out. Maybe it's just the time of day that we were going, that we were only going with the other homeschool kids. But
oh yeah, that's the other added feature. We are homeschool kids. So
so we would the hangout spot in the Christian bookstore was less the CD listening stations and more the TV that's playing VeggieTales.
I was gonna say the sticker aisle, but okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because our audience isn't particularly Christian. Like many times we'll talk about a record because we have covered some records from Tooth and Nail, Solid State, that kind of stuff, and because we enjoyed it and it's a record we like, and many times our audience is like, who is this? I don't know what this is. Is this a Christian thing? And like, it is.
It's always a hard sell. It's like, no, please, I promise this one's really good.
Based on the way you introduced us now, you have to do a Blaster the Rocket Man episode at some point, I think.
We've wanted to. We've tossed them around. We do a Halloween gimmick every year where we do 1 week of horror punk, 1 week of gothic rock, and 1 week of psychobilly, because they're the three horror themed punk genres. And we have thrown around the idea of doing a Blaster episode for the horror punk, and it's funny.
We covered a lot of the big ones, so
we've got a lot of the big bands out of the way. And funnily enough, to mention Daniel again from Blaster, I think I just shared one of your episodes, the one he guested on. I shared that on Instagram stories or something like that.
Okay.
And then he responded to me saying he listened to our episode on the Misfits Earth AD, where he's like, oh, I heard you talking about us on that episode. So it's just like, whoa.
That's great.
Yeah, so he's just all into listening to podcasts and talking to people. So your show is centered on Christian music, and with the advantage of coming onto our show is that you get to step outside of that parameter and get to choose something that's not in that realm.
Thank you.
Yes. Man,
Does it
sometimes,
does
by
it
the
feel
way,
like the first time you got a CD that like your parents wouldn't let you have?
we do talk about that sometimes on our show, but like, man, sometimes I want to quit our show because I'm just tired of talking about these goddamn bands. So this is very nice. Yes, thank you very much for letting us talk about something else.
Yeah. And I guess you have talked about it a little bit on the show. I listened to the episode not too long ago where you two kind of go through your process or how your faith evolved and all that kind of stuff into where you are currently. And that stuff's it was really interesting. I really like that episode a lot. It's just from a, personal interest sort of angle. I really enjoyed it. But also you've talked a little bit about records that you had gotten into outside of the Christian scene. So what are some artists that were monumental for like pushing you away from Christian music?
Jay, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, go.
So in high school, definitely Less Than Jake.
Okay.
The punk ska thing that was going on there at the end of the 90s. Love that. And also like some exploring some past, like I love the Beach Boys in high school. Dug deep into them. And then I didn't really get to listen to a lot of non-Christian music in high school. But when I went to university, but Jay and I went to Texas A&M University, and they had this open network where everyone shared music, across the computers.
Yeah.
And you were just now in this world where you could download anything. Like this is the beginning of the MP3s, all that kind of stuff. And I think some of the very first things, like I remember listening to Jets to Brazil and thinking like, I'm gonna go to hell for listening to this, but it's amazing. That Jets to Brazil, Knapsack, The Promise Ring. I think those were probably some of my big first ones. Yeah.
So Weezer, especially the Blue Album, Operation Ivy, that was definitely a CD that I knew I wasn't supposed to have in high school, but could not get myself to part with it. And then I got into a lot of stuff Clifton was into too, like the emo stuff still. And so like Mineral's first album, which arguably I think is somewhat of a Christian album. Anyway, that one I wasn't having as many issues. I was like, oh, these lyrics are actually, good. A lot of that other stuff I got at the very end of high school because zines and bands thinking other bands. Like I think I got picked up Braid, Frame and Canvas, and Hot Water Music, and a few of those other things that were kind of Knapsack that were kind of in that genre. And so at that point, it was pretty hard to go back. That was when we started to kind of grow out of Christian and into other stuff.
We should probably mention the Pixies.
Yeah, definitely the Pixies as well.
Yeah, you've done some Patreon episodes. I think you call them Your Music Damned Us?
Yeah.
Which is where you cover the secular records that you got into.
Yes.
Also, does the word secular... Whenever I say that word, I'm like, man, that is just a Christian's word. Like, that is not a word.
Yes.
I had a friend in college who used worldview in like a paper that they did in high school or like I think they were doing the GED program, and they like whoever the proctor was like, "Are you a Christian?" They're like, yeah, kind of. I grew up Christian. And like that's a Christian word.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a dead giveaway.
We use it on the podcast. That is the end of my usage of that word these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is just so funny though. It's just like it's its own language to just be like, look, we're not like the rest of the world out there.
Yeah.
Fully on purpose. Very.
We're called to be in the world, but not of the world, guys.
Right. Well, even I highly recommend people check out your show, even if they didn't grow up in the Christian scene, because maybe they won't, relate to some of the experiences of growing up in the church, but just to hear some of the absolutely ridiculous lyrics and even music itself too, like
sometimes
Christian music has a sound in some styles that's just like wholly its own thing too. But
yeah.
Or I think if you want to hear some good music, listen to the Slick Shoes episode. I'm still going to stand behind that being their first EP and their first albums. That's good music. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, and you two do a good job of really being impartial. Like you're able to listen to it and be like, oh, this is actually good, and not just good for Christian music,
Right.
Most of our listeners would not agree with you, but okay, thank you. You should see the emails.
Yeah, we get some hate mail for sure.
I imagine.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a
especially
defensive audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in that 90s Christian recovery group, and I've posted a couple things in there, and there's some people in there. It's just like, wow.
Oh, I know.
I thought this was supposed to be people who were kind of outside of that, but nope, they're still locked into it.
Well, at least we're supposed to be recovering from it, whether, in one way or another, we're supposed to be recovering from this, right? Like, there's other groups for just enjoying it.
Right.
True.
Well, yeah, like I said, I recommend everybody check it out. I'll have links to the show and all that in the show notes, but we can get into the rest of the show. So the premise of the show is we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk adjacent album from that year to discuss. And before we get into the record we're discussing today, we assigned you the year 2006. And what we like to do is take a look at some of the other albums that came out that same year. And before we go too far into that, what were some records from that year that you were considering discussing?
I'm going to give just a tiny brief personal aside, if that's okay. I
Sure.
love that you picked 2006. And we didn't have any discussion about this. You just gave me the year.
You just said no 90s. That was like your only rule.
Yeah, our only thing was like, please don't do 90s because that's all we ever do on our podcast.
Yeah.
So, no, 2006 is great because Clifton and I we both together had made a big life move. We both moved to Prague in the Czech Republic that year and taught English abroad. So for us, it's like a very memorable year. So I thought it was really cool that you picked that. And I'll also say it was definitely like we both have iPods. And it was definitely like we were listening to a shit ton of music because like we didn't, you don't drive, you take public trains, you walk around everywhere. So just listening to music constantly. So like had a lot of choices.
But here's the thing, Jay. I don't know if you ran across. We didn't have good internet in Prague, but we had good internet before we left for Prague, right? So I downloaded tons of music to take to Prague, but it was all before 2006. So 2006 is kind of this hole, like in my music listening thing. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we were listening to it in 2007, but it came out.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'll name one of mine that I really would love to do, but I know Clifton is not as big a fan of this band, but Me Without You, Brother Sister, since we're coming from the Christian stuff. Yeah. Fantastic album. I love it. Maybe their best album, arguably, from a lot of people. So that's a great one.
I actually like that album, Jay.
Okay.
But
well.
that's the one Me Without You album I really like. Yeah. I wanted to do Cassio Tone for the Painfully Alone, but Jay called me a poser. And
another great album from that year.
Yeah, Etiquette.
Yeah. I think there's a bunch of albums that we had down on our list that I don't know how punk adjacent they are, but we still really love them. So like Man, Six Demon Bag, that album came out in 2006. This one is definitely not punk, but we loved this album. Hot Chip, The Warning was a great album.
2006 is like, remember, Franz Ferdinand was 2005. So 2006 is like dance punk, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we're getting some fun stuff. We're getting The Rapture. Who else was TV on the Radio wasn't dance punk, but they're kind of in that same kind of like boppy kind of, in indie stuff, Yeah. She Wants Revenge. Who else? I'm looking through my list here. Sorry.
Well, to give you another punk one that is a good album that we could have done, Bouncing Souls, the Gold record.
Yeah.
It's always a good choice. Anything Bouncing Souls.
The Appleseed Cast had an album that year. Jay, you really love this album, Ford Russia's Give Me a Wall.
What?
You don't remember Ford Russia? You listened to it a lot when we were in Prague.
I do not remember that, so oops.
Yeah. 2006 was also briefly following all the bands being called Something Wolf, and so there was a band called AIDS Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
They put out an album that year. Yeah. Some of my top ones outside of the punk thing were I'm also a big Twee fan. So Camera Obscura's Let's Get Out of This Country came out that year. And Math and Physics Club had an album that year. The Shins had an album that year. All great. But on the punk side, Fucked Up's Hidden World, an amazing album came out that year. But we're not doing that one.
One other one that is Christian related, Danielson, Ships.
Ships came out
that
that
year.
Yeah.
You know, Did I Step on Your Trumpet and all that stuff.
Is that arguably the most accessible Danielson record?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
That's
listen
how
to it a
feel.
lot. Yeah,
I feel like that's the one that I like listen to in full the most.
I agree. Yeah.
I think
Which-
there was some Danielson stuff after that was pretty accessible. Like, what's the one? The next one after it. It was like it came out way later though. So like Ships was kind of like the end for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Best of Gloucester
Oh, right. Yeah.
County. I listened to that when it came out.
Okay.
It was. I remember liking it. I don't know that it's like beloved by anyone. It came out so much later, but
Yeah. 2006. Oh, go ahead.
Wait, Defiance, Ohio, folk punk. Their Great Depression. Their kind of magnum opus album was 2006 as well.
Yeah, that's definitely the one I would have listened to the most from them when I was in my folk punk phase.
It's the one that I still revisit.
Yeah. It probably holds up the best.
Yeah, it does.
Some notable records we can mention here. This is the same year as The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. Huge record. Sam's Town by The Killers.
Mhm.
We've got Converge, No Heroes. Rise Against, The Sufferer and The Witness. We get some metalcore. We got your Killswitch Engage, your Lamb of God. AFI's December Underground. Yeah. We've covered this year a few times in the past. And let me pull that up real quick.
Oh, it's also Garage Punk Revival. Arctic
Mhm.
Monkeys. I think the Art Brute album came out the year before, 2005. But we get a lot of garage rock, kind of garage punk,
hmm
2006.
it always surprises me that that Arctic Monkeys record came out in 2006 because they seem like a later band to me. But
I know, don't they? Yeah. But I remember listening to it in Prague, sitting there waiting for a tram.
So previously we have covered in episode 292, we covered He Is Legend, Suck Out the Poison. Speaking of Tooth and Nail, Solid State.
There you go.
Episode 238, we covered Dusk and Summer by A Dashboard Confessional. Episode 182, we did This Is Satire by None More Black.
Okay.
Episode 139, we did If Only You Were Lonely by Hawthorne Heights. That was a guest episode with the drummer from the band Arms Like Roses. Episode 119, we did Angels and Airwaves, We Don't Need to Whisper. We did that with the host of the podcast, Generation GC, which was a Good Charlotte podcast.
Ooh.
I forgot how
And
much Pac Sun punk we've done from this
yeah,
year.
we really have.
Mall, Abercrombie.
Right, yeah. It was a big year for mall emo, yeah.
And all the way back in episode 2, we covered Run Kid Runs, This Is Who We Are, another Tooth and Nail Records band. That is the former Sidewalk Slam.
Oh, okay.
They changed their name and style to be like glossy mall pop, pop emo stuff. So yeah, we've hit 2006 a few times, but you're right, Dylan. We've done like the same style like 4 times in that year. That is funny.
Well, I'm glad we could pick something outside of that style.
Right. It is very
Yeah.
different. Yeah. So I guess we can get into that. So the record you chose for us to talk about today is The Body, the Blood, the Machine by the Thermals.
God reached his hand down from the sky. He flooded the land, then he set it afire. He said, fear me again. No, I'm your father. Remember that no one can breathe underwater. So bend your knees and bow your heads. Save your babies, here's your future. Yeah, here's your future. God reached his hand down from the sky. God So here's your future. God told his son it's time
And
to
I have a few stats on the band. They're from Portland, Oregon. They formed in the year 2002 and released this record August 22nd, 2006 on Sub Pop Records. This is the band's third full-length album. And I had to do a little digging to figure out who did what on the record. According to the liner notes, it just says all the songs and arrangements were done by Hutch Harris and Kathy Foster. And then I did find later that Hutch Harris performed guitar, bass, vocals, and keys on the record. And Kathy Foster performed bass, vocals, percussion, and keys as well. And the record was produced by Brendan Canty of Rites of Spring and Fugazi,
Wow.
with some assistant productions by Pete Tuez. He only did this record, a later Thermals record, and something in between that I can't remember. But yeah, Brendan Canty, very interesting. At the time, he had already produced music for the bands The Makeup, Ted Leo and the Pharmacists, Mary Timony, and Medication. So he'd done a little bit of production work, which he's not really known for his production work, but
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And I'll get into more a little bit of the backstory a little bit later. But the first thing I like to ask our guests is, what made you choose this record for us to talk about?
I'll start because I was kind of the one that was like, we should do this record. A couple things. I remember listening to this record a lot during that time period. I fucking love the song A Pillar of Salt. And more than anything, though, unfortunately, I felt like this record is pretty timely considering our current political state right now. In some ways, it's almost prophetic. And so
It's rough at times.
yeah, I just felt like, plus like us coming on, since we're from like the Christian podcast, I was like, oh, this is just all seems to make sense. You know?
I don't have. Jay chose this.
You didn't. You went with it. You could have.
I went with it.
I appreciate it.
Because I listened to it once or twice at the time, but I didn't fall in love with it. You know, this is in my deconversion. You know, phase. I was in the kind of the ignoring Christianity at this time. You know, so yeah.
Jay's leaving you out to hang on this one.
Sorry.
So I guess before, I don't know where we do this. So I guess before we get into the actual record and talk about everything, there is some negative controversy around the band, the Thermals. And it does come from lead singer, guitarist, songwriter, Hutch Harris has been accused of, from people in the Portland music scene have called him a groomer and a predator. And in a way very similar to Ryan Adams, who would use his like power and like fame to entice younger women into getting involved with him. And so there is an element of the band of darkness over the band that kind of shades a little bit of everything that they do, but definitely wanted to mention that up front before we really dig into the record, in case people were like, oh, why are you covering this band, you know?
Yeah, and I want to say we're not like obviously endorsing
Right.
any of that. I also
That's
want to say,
gross.
sadly, that is also kind of familiar to us from what we
Yes.
cover on our podcast. Men using their positions of power to groom others. It's just, unfortunately, it's a common theme, especially in the like Christian world.
Yeah.
And non-Christian world, but you know, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we've had people suggest we cover this record in particular. Actually, I think we've been asked to do this by patrons at least twice, and we always would give the disclaimers like, we'll cover it, but know this, you know, about them, and they would usually wind up changing their mind, which I'm kind of thankful for, that it's not just Dylan and I doing this record by ourselves, because Dylan and I didn't have Thermals phases, so to us this is mostly like, we knew of them and kind of the importance in the scene, and then we never got into them ourselves. So this is basically my real introduction to their music. So I had that, you know, kind of cloud going into it, being like, but thankfully you brought up a good point of you have covered some pretty terrible people on your show as well. So,
Well, we've covered some pretty terrible people on our show.
Yeah, we have.
Many times. We've done a Smiths episode, and
Right.
there was like,
yeah,
you know, we've done. We did that Christmas. Was the Christmas one?
Yeah, it was,
compilation where it was like half of the bands had accusations against them.
yeah. It was one of those Punk Goes Christmas compilations, and yeah, like literally half the band had accusations. So yeah, obviously not an endorsement, but
No.
And
Right.
and there's certainly other kind of notorious people that like have certain I guess significance culturally, historically to punk music that like there's room to talk about their records in some light at some point on the show. And like I think of like Nation of Ulysses as a big it's like that's a massive important band, but Ian Svenoni is kind of icky. So yeah, it is what it is, but it's always I feel like something to make a disclaimer of, to just say like,
yeah,
we're not telling you to go buy thermals.
Yeah.
Don't go buy this album.
Yeah.
I say that all the time on our show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess let's go into when you first heard this album. Did you hear it in Prague in 2006 for the first time?
Or
We were in Prague when it
2007.
came out.
And I
Yeah.
swear to God, Clifton, I'm pretty sure I think you downloaded this. And
Probably
this is maybe
so.
how I first heard it. I just assumed you'd listen to it more. But yeah,
Look,
I
I
remember
download a lot of things.
I remember walking around and being like, oh shit, they're talking about the Bible. What the hell is this? And then being like, but goddamn, this song is catchy, and so yeah, I was just pretty into it.
I think I listened to it once or twice at the time, and I think musically this isn't my jam, I'm more of a melodic kind of got to have a hook every once in a while kind of person, and I think this one is very not that. And so it didn't catch a lot of my imagination, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally I ask Dylan, what's his experience with the band, but it's none, right?
I'm trying
Maybe
to
not.
remember if I had listened to this record prior, if I had listened to the Thermals prior. I don't think that I've listened to this record before. I feel like I've heard them at some point, but I'm not 100% sure what it was or when. Most likely it would have been like 2015 or so when I was working at the bank, and and I was listening to just like 8 hours of music a day. So they might have been a band that came up on shuffle, or like maybe I put something on and was like, oh, I've heard about this band, seen this band. And I think at that time, I don't remember if those accusations had come out or not.
I don't think so. Those accusations came out around when they broke up. I saw a lot in 2019, but yeah, kind of around that 2017, 2018, 2019. Yeah. So
I would have heard them at some point, and I guess for whatever reason, nothing really like tipped the scale for me to like dig into them. I definitely know this album cover.
Yeah.
I've seen it a ton of times. I've seen the fucking A album cover a bunch of times. They were definitely on the internet everywhere a lot. People that I followed on Tumblr would have been posting their songs, and like they were just a band that a lot of people listened to, and you just saw their stuff all the time. I'm trying to think if there's like, I feel like there's like a classic Thermals t-shirt that you might have seen at a lot of shows, but there's not anything that jumps out to mind as far as like that's the one that everybody had. But they definitely were around, and just a band that I was vaguely aware of, and like for whatever reason never dug into them. And then they broke up, and then then the accusations, and then it's kind of just been like, well, that's not an urgent listen.
Right.
We were born to sin. We were born to sin. We don't to heaven. I carry my baby. I carry my baby. Her eyes can barely see. Her mouth can barely breathe. I can see she's afraid. She can see the danger. And we don't want to die or apologize for our dirty God, our dirty bodies.
Well, Bill and Justin, I'd be curious to get, as we go, I'm very curious to get your take on this then, since you both really haven't listened to it before this.
Yeah, I guess we could do that. Or do you want to do the backstory first? What do you think?
Let's do backstory first.
Yeah.
All right. So prior to the existence of the Thermals, Hutch Harris played with Kathy Foster in a folk duo called Hutch and Kathy. They did some other projects together. I don't think they did a ton recorded wise. And the initial launch of the Thermals was designed to be a solo project for Hutch Harris. He recorded the first record entirely in his kitchen, and Kathy was brought in to be part of the live version of the Thermals. She plays bass live, and then they brought in Jordan Hudson of M. Ward's band to play drums on live shows, and Ben Barnett as a second guitarist. And they wound up getting signed to Sub Pop Records thanks to Ben Gibbard of Death Cab for Cutie. He had heard some early recordings and gave him to Sub Pop, and they got him signed. They signed the band to a 3-album deal after they only existed for 6 months. So that's a very big leap of faith from Sub Pop.
That's more of a Christian. That happens a lot in the Christian world. That's
Yeah, that is like tooth and nail 101. Maybe they learned it from Sub Pop. It is the same region.
True.
Maybe it was less uncommon with older indie labels.
Yeah, maybe.
I wonder if they were kind of doing that same mentality. And I could see Sub Pop being like, well, we've had bands blow up off of our label.
That's true.
So we want to keep you locked down. Like, if you're going to go somewhere, we want a piece of it.
Yeah. And then I guess what Tooth and Nail says, MXPX, you're signed to a 9-album deal before we let you. Your children.
Teenagers for all they're worth.
Yeah, and this is the last album they do for Sub Pop.
It is.
Which is funny because this is their biggest album. You'd think maybe they'd want to like sign an extension or something, but this is the final one they do for Sub Pop.
Yeah. So they released the debut record 2004 that is called More Parts Per Million. That is followed by Fucking A in 2000. That says 2004. I think the other one's 2003. That's a typo on my notes. So good job, past me. And then following that record, Barnett leaves the band, so Harris becomes the sole guitar player. And prior to going into the studio to record this record, their drummer Jordan Hudson dropped out of the band. So this leaves just Kathy and Hutch to record the entire record together. So Kathy takes over all the percussion. She plays bass and all the drums. And then Hutch kind of does more like the guitar and vocals. He plays some bass on the record too. But yeah, it's just a 2-person record, basically. And they do bring in drummer Lauren Coleman to play drums live, but they are not on the record. And yeah, this record was essentially they don't call it a concept record. The label doesn't. I don't think the band does either. But there is a theme and kind of a story that goes through the entire record. Just about a couple trying to flee the United States due to the nation being run by faux Christian fascists. And you hinted at that earlier, but man, does that feel way more apt today than it.
Yeah.
Because I think of that, I'm like, this came out in the Bush era. This is a Bush record, really.
So it's a second year of Bush's second term. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're like now probably like, oh, how quaint to think that was the fascist. They were fascists.
They were.
Okay,
that's a thing. A point of contention for me. I remember how bad Bush was. I remember how bad Cheney was. I remember the Christo-fascist slide of American politics. Like, I remember the jingoism. I remember the boot in your ass. That's where ICE came from, was anti-Islam, turning that into a secret police force. And that's what it is now. Now it literally is like making people disappear, making American citizens disappear, or, people with legal right to be here. It's just, I still hate Bush. That's what is the point.
I mean, for support the troops bullshit came out of that, like, well, if you don't support the war, you don't support the troops. Kind of bullshit, like where you can't. I mean, there was a lot of literally like you can't question anything. Bullshit that came out of the Bush years.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
Escalation of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and rolling back rights and the Patriot Act, and all kinds of insane shit that is just like why our country is as bad as it is now. It's why Trump has the opportunity for 2 terms.
Right. And a bunch of the xenophobic bullshit that we put up with now, but it was but remember Bush tried to couch it in this like conservative, or sorry, what do you call it?
Compassionate conservatism.
Compassionate conservatism, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't come out and tell you that you needed to hate brown people, but Trump, I think, will,
Yeah. I feel like he's a couple speeches away from that. Yeah.
Yeah. The masks are off now.
Yeah. Woof.
Or the masks are on, depending on how you want to think about the
yeah.
hoods are on. Okay.
Yeah. I guess maybe the difference between then and now is it really does feel like we might need to get out of the country. More now than then.
It's funny because, and I don't know if we want to move into this part, but I reading people kind of looking at the meanings of these songs, a lot of people kind of talk about how like the first song is the beginning of this, couple trying to escape this Christo-fascist nation, but that's not what I see. I see in the first song kind of a build up to that, kind of the propaganda that's laying the groundwork for the Christo-fascist nation. It almost seems like a preacher who's using the Noah and the flood story as a to quote, we're going to create the new master race because we're so pure. Oh Lord, we're so pure. As like, well, God came and wiped out everyone who wasn't holy except for Noah and his family, and now it's our job to do God's work. That's kind of what I get out of the first song.
Yeah. So I guess we can pivot into our thoughts on the record now. Okay, Dylan, I'm gonna put you out there here for a second. Every single time I discussed that we were talking about this record with Dylan, he reacted with an ugh, like every
audible groan
single time.
But why?
I think I know why, but I'll let Dylan. You can kind of explain your feelings there.
I mean, it's mostly just the accusations thing. And that's where I've had to continue to remind myself, like, we've done a Smiths record. We did a Smiths record. Which, granted, going into doing a Smiths record, I was like, ugh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which I already disliked the Smiths music.
Though, to be fair, you also make that noise every year we do the Celtic Punk episode. So that's
true.
Also...
Yeah. It's not always, like, moral. Sometimes it is just purely I'm disinterested in the music. But, it's purely just kind of like the reminder of it. And also there's should probably be a little more cautious in saying that allegedly Hutch Harris.
That's true. Yes. I guess all of this is alleged. It is not necessarily.
You said he's been accused of, so that's
sure. But he's he hangs out in I think he's in LA now. And I think he got booted from Portland. And he plays shows occasionally around LA, and very unfortunately with Kepi Ghoulie, who is someone that I think is a very nice and seems like a very safe person. It's an odd pairing. That definitely also just kind of weighs on my feelings about it. So it's like,
so
I need to know what Hutch Harris looks like, because I got to be careful about if I run into him.
Did he never address the accusations?
So there was a point where people were pointing out old tweets from the Thermal's account. Like he, for a 5-year period, would make underage girls jokes on Twitter.
Oh, well, that's gross.
Yeah. And a lot of jokes about, jailbait's in the green room is usually one of the common jokes that he would throw in there.
Jesus Christ.
And so when people screenshotted a bunch of the old posts and then brought it up to him in probably 2017, he just put the account on lockdown, so no one could see anything that he tweets anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he's ever addressed anything directly.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I do know there was also a related or a recent abuse accusation against another musician, Portland musician, from a Portland musician who was one of the people that was in some sort of relationship and in contact with Hutch. And they had like a months-long thing going against another musician that they were in a relationship with. That situation was a little bit more of a both sides were kind of shitty, but it definitely not like that it negates the person that they were accusing, but they were not completely honest from a lot of what I've seen and what has come out in that situation, or at least like covering their own shitty behavior. They were, I think, honest about what the person they were accusing did, but just like, had their own skeletons as well, which, it's not, abuse is not always a unilateral thing, and people can abuse each other. And I think you're guilty and responsible for the things that you do, regardless of what someone else did to you. But it's not a who started it situation. But they had screenshots of conversations with Hutch Harris and pictures of themselves with Hutch, when they were a teenager or like just turned 18 when he was still in Portland and the Thermals were still active or semi-active. So, but that stuff got nuked because people kind of ganged up on them and they just like deleted their Twitter. So a lot of that stuff's gone. But no, I don't know that Hutch has ever really responded to anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So
which means he probably hasn't come to terms with his abuse and
usually.
Okay.
Yeah, it sucks. It's just like one of those things where it's like, man, it's but yeah, it seems to be just ignore kind of works out better for them in the long run. People tend to make comebacks from it just by ignoring stuff or just denying. But yeah. So he still plays music, so there's a chance, But again, it's all alleged, So take that with what you will. Don't sue us, Hutch. But okay, so that is the holdback. That is the thing that makes us go, ugh. Yeah. But listening to it in a vacuum, I always try and be fair to what it is we cover on the show. I guess I go first as I'm talking now. I thought it was a solid record. It's tough because you never know like what it is that's kind of holding me back from freely enjoying it. But musically, I enjoy a lot of what they're playing. I enjoy the songwriting. I enjoy like the overall production and feel for it. I'm not the biggest fan of his vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, he sounds to me when I listen to this record like a mixture of Reese Roper from Five Iron Frenzy and John Darnell of the Mountain Goats. Like it feels like a mash of those two voices.
No,
a
those
lot
are
of people say the Mountain Goats. Yeah,
really?
I've seen that a lot of people say that about him.
Because the guy from Mountain Goats has a pretty annoying voice. I mean, I like it, but it's annoying. I get it, And this isn't that. I don't think.
I don't hear
that level.
I don't hear a ton of Mountain Goats. I can see the comparison, but it wasn't the first thing I thought of.
I thought his vocals were honestly too plain. I mean, there are he has his moments, right? But I thought overall it was just, I guess I can do my what I thought of things now. Kind of my main critique of the album is that kind of if you listen to it along with the lyrics, and someone's already told you that it's kind of a concept album, I think it's fairly compelling. I enjoyed listening to it. I saw a lot of things in it that were kind of rough to look at with today's world, but I think that, and this is just for me, when I listen to it, the music isn't good enough or varied enough for me to listen to it over and over again. And I think if you want to get the kind of ongoing story of the album, you need to listen to it over and over again. I'm going to compare it. This I may get called a poser again for this, but I'm going to compare it to Hold Steady's Separation Sunday, which is kind of a concept album the year before this one, in a similar vein. I think on that album, the music is compelling enough, the vocals are compelling enough that as you listen to it over and over again, you're like, oh, there's a story going on here, And this one, nothing about it is compelling me to listen to it over and over again to be like, oh, there's a story going on here, And so I'm never going to get to the point where I'm really appreciating it. And I think that, when you said it's a 2-person album, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there needed to be more texture to this album, some more heads putting in more layers, I think. I think it really would have helped it.
Yeah, my understanding of the recording process was kind of like they would just pick up an instrument that's currently not being used by the other person whenever they would we're starting a song. So it's a very, very, I guess, jammy approach to recording a record, which I'm sure Brendan Canty, being in Fugazi, has done every type of recording, with those individuals. So I could see him being more of a do whatever you want. Why not? Let's throw that in there, kind of producer.
Interesting. Yeah. And there's songs, there's literally songs that are just the same chord for 45 seconds and then 2 different chords and then the same chord again for 45 seconds. And I'm not sure that the story compels that out of the music.
I did notice that it feels like there's 3 songs that basically have the same intro as far as the guitar part is concerned. I don't know if that's considered a leitmotif. Maybe that's going for a similar, there is a story to the record. So maybe it is that particular riff was meant to be played multiple times on the album. Not sure if that was the intent or not, but it comes across that way to me.
I will say I think the first song is great. And even Jay knows that I'm not a big fan of guitar solos, but I think the guitar solo lead thing that happens toward the end of the song is brilliant. It's kind of this staccato thing that's kind of off rhythm. I think it's wonderful.
I guess Jay's thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to be the one carrying this album on my back. I can see through this thing, but that's okay. I mean, it's not my favorite album ever, but I do like it quite a bit. For me, and Clifton knows this, I'm not as much a lyrics guy usually. Although this album is one that I think is pretty easy to understand most of the time what he's saying. It's not one that you have to really listen hard to pick it out. I find little lines in this really stand out to me, and I kind of like that. There's little hooks and little lines in a lot of the songs that I'm pretty into in this. I do think A Pillar of Salt is a fucking great song. I've just always loved that song. So that's another part of this album where I'm just well, that one song is so good that, the rest of the album, it kind of lifts it up a little bit. I do agree. There's not a ton of variety on this. I'm glad it's only 10 songs. If it was 15 or something, this would really be a lot to listen to.
The story, though, could have used another song or 2.
You're right. And that's another issue, is the story is not, at first you're I think for the first song or 2, you're okay, I see where this is going. And then you start to be wait, what? Is this skipping order? Is this a different perspective? What's going on here? It's hard to follow.
A lot of my notes for the albums is, if what's going on is what I think is going on, I think this song belongs later in the album, or this song belongs earlier in the album.
Yeah. I didn't notice. I didn't feel I lines that would jump out at me. It would do the same thing to me. I was wait, I thought that should have happened already. That's the story's out of order, in some places. But yeah.
One song that I don't think gets a lot of attention, maybe is that had lines that really jumped out at me. It's kind of an annoying song. It's the second one. It's the one that keeps going like it follows, or they follow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because when I first heard it, I thought it was, like maybe people chasing the people who are trying to get away. But I don't think so. I think this is way earlier in the story of kind of the buildup of the or the Christo-fascist nation. Because it has lines like locust tornadoes, crosses, and Nazi halos. They follow. Lashes and grins, ass backwards medicine. They follow. They'll drown your disease. They'll pound you with the love of Jesus. They follow. They're only God's babies. They follow. They know. And like I said, at first I thought maybe this was like about someone, being followed. But as I listened to it more and more, I started thinking, I think this is a song about how we see this all the time right now, where Christians are like, I'm only following I don't want to hate you, but Jesus tells me to, kind of thing. It's like I'm just following God's good book, kind of relieving themselves of the moral repercussions of their own actions.
Whatever happened to love the sinner, hate the sin? I feel like they've even dropped that out of their own vernacular. Now it's just hate everything.
They've at least realized that it doesn't actually make sense.
I personally think they were able to get themselves to the point of, hate the sin, love the sinner, but the way I'm going to love you is with tough love, and I'm going to beat your ass until you do the right thing.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Love the sinner with total annihilation.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what God does,
I mean,
well,
killer assault.
and this album, I mean, just going back to the first song for a second, the lyrics, God reached his hand down from the sky, he flooded the land, then he set it afire. Yeah. I mean, that's the way this album starts.
Yeah. And if you believe in hell, you think that's what God's going to do to people eventually anyways, so who cares if you start a little early?
Yeah. Clifton, to go back to the second song you were talking about, and it's called I Might Need You to Kill.
Yeah.
But you talked about how the first song, it's got that guitar solo, it's rocking, and so here's your future, it's going. And then the second song starts, and to me it sounds a little nicer, it's a little calmer, and it always cracks me up because he's like, locusts, tornadoes, crosses, and Nazi halos. Like, it's just like,
Nazi halos.
Yeah, it sounded nice, but now we're talking about Nazi halos. So I enjoyed that. That's what I like about those albums, just little parts like that kind of just catch you, and you're like, oh, that's kind of funny, in a fucked up way.
Yeah.
So we have not heard Dylan's take on the record yet. So all the dread leading into the album.
Yeah.
How did you feel after you actually listened to it?
I tried to listen. Well, you know what? I'll be honest. I didn't try that hard to listen with open ears. I'm not going to lie and say that. I will say I'm pretty good at being open-minded. I don't know why this record I had so much dread for. I can't fully put my finger on why this is the one. Because like I fully will still listen to Led Zeppelin records. Like I'm not a crusader. Truly not. Like it's, I don't know, just something about it seemed, looming, that it felt like more work than it should have been. And musically, I think I would have probably been into this a little bit if I had given it a shot earlier in life. I can certainly see, especially the time period for where I like maybe would have heard some songs from them for the first time, like in maybe 2015. Like I'm kind of surprised I didn't listen to their full records then, because a lot of what this record sounds like is a lot of what I was interested in at that time. Because I can hear a lot of like Chapel Hill, Superchunk, Archers of Love.
Yeah.
Kind of noisy, melodic, real scrappy, indie rock stuff.
Yeah.
And then also like some garagey punk stuff, and like and I think that especially I want to say I think the song Pillar of Salt, like with that clean guitar on it, and a lot of his voice reminds me of Jack from Dead to Me, and Toy Guitar, which I loved, that Toy Guitar record that came out in 2015. And there's a lot of that record that sounds like the Thermals, that sounds like this record. But I'm surprised that I didn't get into them much earlier. And I can see the importance and the influence and the interest that people had in them. But like I said, I didn't try super hard to let myself be impressed by it, so I kind of wasn't. And like, that's not fair. I'll say that much. But
You went full Shania on that one.
But as much as I like, it's definitely like, if a joke is funny, you laugh at it. You can't not laugh at it. Like, if there's good parts or if the song is good, like, I can't completely dislike it. And there's strong stuff here. Pillar of Salt definitely is a great song. Really can't deny that one. And there's plenty of other stuff where it's like, I like this part, but I don't like the song overall, or like maybe like a song just overstays its welcome a little bit. So on the most objective scale that I can rate it, or like how I can review it, I would say that it's decent. I get where people got into them. I can definitely relate it to stuff that I love, but it's also just like, I don't love his voice, and I truthfully don't love his voice. Like, there's some qualities where he reminds me of Jack, but I don't think he's as quite as good of a vocalist as Jack Dalrymple. And it kind of reminds me too, though, like of, and I think a lot of the hype of the Thermals reminds me of like Japandroids.
Yeah.
Who I was super into on their first record.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kept putting out records like every 4 years. And I was like, that band's still going.
Yeah, right.
And like,
And
Japandroids
Japandroids also did that thing where they were like the most protective, like if you try to download their albums, they'd come after you kind of bullshit. Fuck those guys.
Also,
I get it, but fuck those guys.
Also another duo, like a 2-person
Yeah.
band. So yeah.
Yeah, I listened to this and it reminds me of similar stuff at the same time, like the Mountain Goats being fairly big around this point. They would get bigger, of course, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I even found a review from probably Pitchfork that specifically dropped Mountain Goats as a reference point. Ted Leo as well. That's another one that I kind of like fit in this like similar lane of what they're doing.
Ted Leo was one that a comparison I wanted to make while listening to it, because I've always associated the Thermals with Ted Leo as being like in the same lane of punk that Brooklyn Vegan talks about, like the indie kids like. And they don't really sound similar, but they do annoy me in similar ways.
I'm glad to find someone else who finds Ted Leo annoying. So
Man, I got to defend all my stuff on this show. Jeez. I was like, yeah, I like Ted Leo. Oh shit.
And Ted Leo was one that like I recently like I tried to listen to one of those classic records because I was like, that's an important band. I should listen to them. Like, I feel like they're something I could like, and I was just like, I don't like this. I'm not.
Like, it's funny because this and Ted Leo in similar ways have a bunch of like when I listen to them, I'm recognizing influences that I know I like and I don't like. Like the outcome is not. I don't find it charming. It's not doing it for me.
Well,
This is gang
more
up on
Ted
J
Leo
Day.
for me. Yeah, more Ted Leo for me. It's whatever. It's all right. It's all right.
He's got plenty of fans.
It's true.
I did want to say that the Thermals are I think they are pretty important and influential on a certain type of music that comes a little bit later. Like, I listen to this record and I hear a lot of what Jeff Rosenstock does as well. Even some AJJ I feel like is inspired by this, like especially if you look at like the political type stuff that AJJ would do. There's probably more that I'm not quite thinking of, but they were coming out with records around the same time that a friend of ours, Dave Brown, he hosts a podcast called One Band 5 Songs, and he considers like there's like this indie punk sound that started to form in the like this time period, like the mid 2000s, that would become really influential on what a lot of like DIY and punk would go going forward. And like lumping like the Thermals in with bands like I'm trying to think of what he has compared. Like Lemuria is in that camp. Laura Stevenson is also in that kind of scene. A little bit of the P.S. Eliot from this time period. What's another one that's kind of in this vein? The Sidekicks have a little bit of that, but they come a little later.
Yeah.
Even some Tiger's Jaw probably has a little bit of this in there too. But this is a record that's, I think, is pretty important. I think influence-wise on the way people write songs. I'm sure people like Chris Farron, were influenced by it. Yeah, I feel like it's an important record, and I think that's part of why I was really okay with doing the album for the show, because if this was like one of their last records, or I when we did the Smiths, we were like, the Smiths are an important band, so we should cover them. Now, if it's just like a no-name band and like there's all this shady stuff around them too, we probably would have been a little more like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this record feels pretty important. Though that being said, I don't think I would ever want to do a brand new record on this show ever. For his problems, but yeah, and they're important, so that would be one of my hard vetoes. But yeah, so I think it's an important record.
Yeah, Lemuria and like a lot of those indie punk, like those bands that were doing, because I don't think the Thermals really sounds like Lemuria, but I feel like it's the same world. Like,
yeah,
it's sort of, it is punk musically, and also in a lot of what people would call like a punk philosophy, that but it's also more than that, because I can this record to me does sound, and I think one of the like best things about it is that it does try to expand beyond the limitations of subgenre. And this time, yeah,
justify that for me.
I think there's something about I think there's something in the songwriting that aspires to be more than just how they're gonna play it. You know what I mean? Like, they definitely have their default kind of like playing styles that they reach for, in terms of like when they pick up their guitar, they're going to play a riff that's like this. But I think there's something in the songwriting where you can take away those elements, and there's an emphasis on songwriting, which I feel like is something that is not always true of punk bands. This doesn't feel like it's stapled together riffs like a hardcore band does, or like, and it doesn't feel like it's necessarily like just a paint by numbers kind of like, we got the verse, we got the chorus, we got the whoa kind of like pop punk mentality.
It's not pop punk. You're right. Yes.
And it seems like the songwriting is informed by power pop. It's informed by garage rock. It's informed by indie rock. It's informed by singer-songwritery stuff. And like,
okay.
And I think that's what a lot of artists were doing at this time, like Lemuria and Ted Leo, and like where it was just like, we want to write good songs, but we're like we're coming from this scene, and these are kind of like the things that we know how to do with our instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But the song is kind of first and the most important part of it.
Because I think the first 2 or 3 times I listened to the CD, I felt like a good portion of the songs existed to deliver the lyrics, for me at least.
Yeah. And I can see that. I mean, that's definitely a type of songwriting, I think.
Fair. No, and yeah, there's great songs out there. Yeah, there's great songs out there. I mean, the Mountain Goats, we just talked about them. You know, there's great songs out there that exist to deliver lyrics. And yes, I agree with that.
And it's not even truthfully my favorite type of writing. It's probably one of the weaker aspects of the songwriting to me, is to put the lyrics first. But
yeah,
or like not to put the lyrics first. It's a weird thing with lyrics. You want them to mean something and say something, but you don't want to feel like you're reading
slam poetry,
an article, a paper, you know?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think in terms of like what the topics chosen for songwriting, it's like, and the sort of like thematic direction that the songwriting takes is like, all right, that's good. That's a good idea. Those are worthy topics to sing about. If you're going to write lyrics that are like going to preach a little bit, I think they're preaching something that people needed to hear it at that time. And like we've said before, like is still relevant today. And it's like, and And for like a garagey, punk band to sing about something more than just feelings or hanging out.
No, I think
or pure nonsense,
I think the lyrics are some of the one of the strong things about this album. And like Jay said, there are some really clever. I mean, like I'm staring at right now at "Good luck getting God on the phone. Good luck getting even a tone," which has a great double meaning to it.
That's a little pun.
Yeah.
There's a line in there in the record. I can't remember which song it is, but it is where he says something like, "I didn't know I needed an older brother," or something along those lines.
I didn't know I didn't know I needed God like a big brother.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, big brother, not older brother. But yeah.
Yeah. It's I like, because there is a song on the record that I was reading a review that was talking about how, like, you think this record is all about how much they hate the church, but that's not true. There's a song in here about, liking the community and liking being part of something and part of a group. And
that is a misinterpretation of these lyrics.
Yep.
That song is definitely about getting caught trying to escape and pretending like you have repented so that you don't get killed.
I wonder what review that was, because it was definitely, I don't remember which one it was because I didn't have the exact line, but yeah. I wonder if that was a later one too. There was one that was like talking about the anniversary of this record not too long ago.
Yeah. But there are like non-negative things about Christianity. Like one of the songs says something like, "But I still have faith if I ever have had faith," something like that.
Yeah. And there is something to be said too about a lot of what ails a lot of American culture now is the disconnectedness that we are from each other. Like, we're all talking to each other on screens and on social media, and like things like people just aren't doing well really in the world, and things like church, but also like being part of a community outreach group or a bowling league, like all these things, like neighborhood watch meetings, like all these things where like you were interacting with people is super beneficial for a lot of people's mental health. Christianity has a way of twisting that and making it unhealthy for everyone.
Yeah, because then when you try to go join a bowling league, all of a sudden you're bowling next to a fucking Nazi, and then sorry.
So yeah. Well, one of the positives of church is the community element. Yeah.
Yes.
I had not thought about the Jeff Rosenstock comparison, but I totally see like that influence on him. I totally can get that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
An interesting context, I think, for a lot of the lyrics, not just the time period, but also the region of Thermals being a Portland band, and like Portland being, super liberal West Coast city, like even like more radical than just liberal, type of politics and like anarchism and community, building and like what that looks like in, a non-hierarchical sense. And then you go outside of Portland and you're in Oregon, you're in KKK state.
Right.
Yeah.
You're in that Pacific Northwest separatist kind of extreme conservatism too. In a very rural state, and how different that is from Portland, and like how quickly you get into that kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, you
like,
guys are from Texas, so you know
Portland.
exactly what that's like.
Yep.
You get outside of your city and it's like, oh no, what is this?
Yeah, I mean, because like I'm an architect and I work with a lot of like small school districts and things like that. And here in Austin, I feel very at home. And then when I go to these small towns, sometimes I do feel very like, this isn't my place. This is, got to keep your mouth shut or you're going to get run off the road kind of thing, Yeah.
Well, and even where I grew up, which was a city, a smaller one, and even my wife has come back now, and she's like, when we come to visit my parents, she's noticed people will like, you'll run into people and they'll be like, so what church you going to? Like, it's like one of the first things they ask you, and you're just like, wait, what? Yeah, it's a weird vibe for sure.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I think the point that you're making, Dylan, is very interesting because it's not only geographically is it shocking, but when you're in Portland and you're kind of adapting to these non-hierarchical means of existing, and then all of a sudden you turn on the TV and there's a president who's like, how can we make this nation more Christian? You're like, oh fuck, people are still doing that. You know?
And what's weird is like, man, that guy does not care about Christianity at all, man. That's just
Bush or Trump?
probably both at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It is. I mean, it's the same thing here when I turn on the news. Like, you know, it's like you exist here, and you know, Austin's not as progressive as like Portland, especially not lately. Like with all the fucking crypto, you know, shitlords moving here and all that kind of stuff. You know,
Joe Rogan and the mothership.
Jesus Christ, yes. But it's still pretty progressive, you know, and the people you talk to just randomly here are very progressive people for the most part. And once again, then you turn on the TV and or like I go home to my hometown, which is up North Texas, Wichita Falls. Oh my God, it's a weight, you know, like you can feel it in the air, just how the fear that they live in, you know, that they're always looking out to like, man, I've got to not sin because then all my friends will reject me, kind of thing, you know. Like it's heavy. Yeah, that was it.
Did anyone else feel like this record tries to end itself 3 times?
Yeah.
I think the songs are out of order.
Yeah, it felt like the way the record was going at the end there. I'm like, all right, this is the last song. I'm like, 2 more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the next song plays, and I'm like, this is the last song. Like, nope,
Yeah,
still one more.
Because Power doesn't run on Nothing is a big song, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because of that, I think it really belongs more towards the beginning of the record. I think both for a story and for how big the song is. But without it, the second half of the record is a sludge.
Yeah, you kind of need it to pick the tempo up.
Yeah. And then you are right that both Back to the Sea and I Hold the Sound are both kind of this like on the run type thing, and let's try not to get caught. And Back to the Sea is probably the better ender, but I think they just had the musical end to I Hold the Sound of like ending with the going, you know, leading to feedback kind of stuff. And so you can't put it as the second to last song, you know?
Right. Yeah, I wonder if it is a case of they recorded everything and then they were like, all right, what order is it going in? And they're like, oh, I don't know about that part.
I think with a slightly different order, it would actually be a more interesting sound that kind of spends more time planting the seed work for the build of the fascist state, you know? Because then all of a sudden we get in Pillar of Salt, which I feel like is too early in the album. We get basically the Pillar of Salt is about coming to realize that, oh shit, I live in a fascist state, and all these walls that we built to keep out the filthy hordes from out there, they're actually holding us in, you know? Yeah. And I don't know, but it's a great song, and it's just I feel like the whole album needs to be slightly rearranged for storytelling purposes.
Yeah, I think it feels like one of those songs maybe should have been the end of the B-side, like on vinyl.
Yeah,
so
that's a good. Yeah,
I wonder if this is a case of the track length maybe messing with what would have fit on that. I don't know.
You think they were thinking about a vinyl at the time? I mean,
they did vinyl for it that year in 2006. So it was Sub Pop.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and some of those last songs are actually pretty long for this band. Yeah, you're right. Some of the earlier songs are pretty short, and then you're like, oh, it's like, oh, this is 4.5 minutes long. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that is what happened. It was a sequencing issue, and then they were just like, oh, well, we'll just put them all here, you know?
Yeah. Because then you also get like Test Pattern, which is, I don't know, I guess would be, well, both Returning to the Fold and Test Pattern are these songs that are kind of like someone got caught and they're pretending like they're repentant, you know, so they don't get themselves killed. And either that song belongs in the middle of Running Away so that someone gets caught but it's not our main characters, or it belongs at the end where it ends with these guys getting caught, you know. But
yeah.
You know.
What's interesting, they're next to each other on the record, but that's where the A-side B-side flip is.
Really?
So Test Pattern ends the A-side and St. Rosa starts the B-side. So I wonder if they were thinking of it as more of a vinyl layout. Because you know how often, you know, I don't know if you're vinyl guys, but, you know, you'll listen to a side and then you'll be doing something else. And then 20 minutes later, you'll come flip it and do the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that is the case.
Interesting.
But if that's the B-side, St. Rosa, not a bad start to the B-side.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
But then it's immediately hit with what sounds like the last song.
exactly.
When I got to Back to the Sea, I was like, oh, this is the end of the record, right? Is that just the beginning of that song? Like, that's the last one. That's got to be the last one. That's a last song. It's just like a repetitive, sludgy fall sounding song. And then it's like, nope, there's 2 more. it's not over yet. And then Power Doesn't Run on Nothing, like, again, kind of more upbeat and fun. I think the sequencing is
also
weird.
If Power Doesn't Run on Nothing had been the second song, it probably would have gotten a lot more listens. I'm looking on Spotify right now, and Power Doesn't Run on Nothing has almost no listens compared to the rest of the album.
Yeah,
but it's a good song.
Yeah, maybe it's the longest too. It's the
5 minutes
14.
Yeah.
This is also an album that, remember there's just 2 of them in the band at this time. Part of me wonders if there was like, oh shit, we better crank out like one more song because we only have like 8 or 9, kind of thing. Like Hold the Sound, I don't think is that great a song.
Is a bad song.
And even when you look at the lyrics, there's just not much there compared to most other songs. So I wonder if they just kind of like, oh, shit, we better do one more. So we'll stick this on. I also don't think it makes a ton of sense with the story either. And so,
like, it has a feel to it. I think it doesn't work. Like, it could have been a better song, but it has a feel to it of like kind of that horror movie feel, of like, holding someone's, your hand over someone's mouth, of like, the soldiers are on the other side of the tree, kind of don't make a sound, kind of thing. But it's like you said, it's the music isn't great. The lyrics are thin, Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, going back to this album, I realized like, oh, I liked this album, but I also really only listened to like the first half of it that much. As I got towards the end, I was like, I don't remember these songs as much. So,
Yeah.
And also, I think EPs make better concept albums, and so then maybe they should have done this as an EP.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm interested in that theory. Can you elaborate?
Because I just think that it takes, like, there's more attention required for a full album, for a concept album. Right. And if you're trying to take, well, it depends on what your concept is, obviously, but if you're trying to tell a story, I just think that less songs is probably the better way to go, because 10 songs is a lot of songs to write.
Yeah.
And like, you can tell they ran out of steam here, like literally. And just as a person who writes songs, it's kind of easy to write 4 to 5 songs on a theme.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I guess that's where my I guess the difference is because it's not technically a concept record according to the band.
They're wrong.
But it's a theme. Like, every single song fits into this theme.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right. It could be a case of the album's only 29 minutes. We need another song to throw in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a concept record in the sense of being like, a Rush album or something.
Right. That's a different kind of concept album. Yes.
It's not a Coheed and Cambria record.
Yeah, it is thematically tied for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So this album was critically acclaimed. It appeared on multiple best of 2006 albums lists from NPR, Pitchfork, AV Club. Every review I read had it like as 4 out of 5 stars or like an 8 out of 10. Like, it's very well regarded. Some songs appeared in some interesting places. So A Pillar of Salt was featured in the video game Skate 3. And Here's Your Future appeared in season 3 of the TV show Weeds.
Oh.
Which one of their songs became their theme song for that show in a later season, I believe.
Oh, not Little Houses.
So yeah, Weeds was a show I didn't watch, and when I read that, I was like, man, remember Weeds? That
Weeds was really the first 2 or 3 seasons of Weeds was really good.
It was one of those like early prestige shows.
Yeah, it was
exactly. Yeah, I never watched it either, but I remember people talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I loved Weeds. Yeah.
And then they would continue to release records. They released Now We Can See in 2009, Personal Life in 2010, Desperate Ground in 2013, and We Disappear in 2016 before calling it quits in 2018, which is kind of around the same time period that the Burger Records roster was all revealed to be Predators, and also around the Ryan Adams type stuff. So it seemed like they broke up because of the accusations were happening at the time. And yeah, they haven't reunited. Hutch has appeared in some interviews and guested with some other artists, but no new music from him on his own. But yeah, I think that is all I have in my notes about the record.
Cool.
So, yeah, any last thoughts on the album?
I mean, okay, as the Thermals fan here, I I still like it quite a bit. It's been weird going back and seeing how kind of right on some of these lyrics are.
Mhm.
You know, when he writes it, it's more like taking the reality under the Bush administration, just really pushing it out and really kind of going extreme with it. And now it's like, oh shit, some of this stuff is not that extreme from where we are today. So that was weird. Kind of going back to it and hearing that. I do agree. I think there are some weaker songs on here. I personally kind of like his singing. I think I'm the only one. I don't know that I want to hear this style of singing like every day, all the time, but I think it's kind of fun for this. And again, I think A Pillar of Salt is a great song. I like the cover art on this album. We haven't really talked about that, but I kind of think it's kind of fun and fitting with that. And yeah, I will still, this is one, putting aside allegations for a second, but just musically, this is one I will still return to and listen to occasionally for sure.
Do it over MP3 because this band has 90,000 monthly listens on Spotify, and
that way we're not giving them any. Yeah.
Yep.
There. It's a good point. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, most people don't care about the accusation. I think the majority of people haven't heard about the accusation.
probably so. Yeah,
I didn't know
so,
until
yeah.
Justin told me when we were messaging back and forth. Yeah.
Who was still following the Thermals in 20?
Fair.
Well, I broke that news to like other people who suggested the record too. So I don't think they're super widely known accusations. Maybe for lack of a single like accuser coming forward, maybe is part of it. Like it was just like more of the general scene vibe of, yeah, he's a creep. That's kind of like the way that the Portland scene thought of him. So yeah, it's just like gray enough where people like weren't paying attention, they missed it, or don't care, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's difficult talking about a record like this, especially with that kind of stuff out there. Thinking of it myself, as far as I reckon, I tried to just think of it more of a historical importance type album, like, and what it means for music going forward. And at the time, I do think it's a solid record. I think it's a good record, just not my taste, like the type of stuff I tend to listen to.
Yeah.
I get why people love it.
I'll say it's interesting as a historical relic because this was written under a different aspiring Christo-fascist leader, and it's still applicable under our current Christo-fascist leader. And so you can see that it's the same direction. It's not like that this is a different thing, you know?
Yeah. Still sadly very prescient today. Yeah.
I'll say that I think it's a still very relevant record too, in the way that it doesn't, though I don't think that it succeeds in all of the risks it takes, it does take some risks and a lot of the sounds and what it even says, you know, like even coming from, you know, a Portland punk scene, like it's still pretty bold to put, you know, that artwork out there and, you know, go on tour and say these things about the government. And it's that's something to aspire to today.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You know, the 2 times Trump's been elected and people have been like, oh, at least punk music will be good again. And like nobody really going this hard.
Yeah. At least no one we know of. Maybe it's out there.
It wasn't a lot. Yeah, there were a couple. But yeah, it wasn't a widespread thing like the Bush administration was. Like Rock Against Bush was like a whole thing.
I remember loving that comp. Yeah, or both those comps, I think, right? Yeah.
I think Bush was surprising, you know, and especially because it was 2 terms. Like you really saw a lot of that really happening during his second term, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas with Trump the first time around, I think that there was enough, because Trump didn't win a majority, you know, a popular majority of the vote, because there was still enough pushback against Trump in his first election, you know, like his like the marches and whatnot, like on his inauguration day. I think there was a feeling of, we're gonna survive, like this fucking sucks, but we're gonna survive it.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't feel that now.
Yeah.
Now it's a lot more bleak.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. just bummed all ourselves out here at the end here.
Don't kill yourself.
Whew. Yeah, it's rough right now, but we'll see what happens. That's really all we can do. It's a day by day thing. Really, it's the only way to take it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank both of you so much for doing the show. I really appreciate it. And we're outside of your normal recording
time frame. So.
Thank you for having us. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's been so fun to talk about something that's not 90s Christian music,
Right.
even though we enjoy that for our podcast and folks should listen to our podcast, but we're, happy to do something else. So thank you.
Where do you recommend everybody check out the show?
We're on Facebook, YouTube. Our website is yourmusicsavedus.com. It's called Your Music Saved Us. If you search that, you're going to find us because we're the only thing out there like that. And then, of course, you're going to be on our next. Well, I don't know when this comes out for you. You're going to be on the episode that comes out this week as we're recording for us. So, next week that's recording for us. Sorry.
I think these are both going to be out the same week because this will go out on Wednesday next
Okay.
week. So for us,
And ours will be out on Thursday.
The next
Hell
day.
yeah. That's double whammy.
Double your Punk Lotto's time / Your Music Saved Us fun by checking out both episodes back to back.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. Unfortunately, I don't think Dylan's going to make it with us. I think it's just going to be me. But yeah, he's working those brunches.
Yeah, they're pretty rough.
Well, Dylan, if there's anything you want to say, send it Justin's way, so we'll make sure we get any comments you got.
I'll try and I'll listen to the record and give you my thoughts on it. Which one are you doing?
Prime candidate for a burnout.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. That's what I thought.
The debut.
Yeah, I'll revisit that one this week. I have listened to it in recent years, so
yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you all so much, and we appreciate the listeners. You can follow us on all forms of social media in Punk Lotto Pod, punklotto@gmail.com, and our voicemail line 202-688-PUNK. And call us, leave us a message, and we'll play it on the show. And I think that will do it, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you all.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.